What Jose Ibarra did to my sister is almost unbearable to listen to. I am completely disgusted having to even look and be in the same room as him. Jose Antonio Ibarra has completely and utterly ruined my life, and I can only hope and pray that he receives a sentence that ruins his.
Mr. Ibarra, if you will please stand. Count 1, malice murder. I sentence you to life without the possibility of parole.
Breaking now, a Georgia judge has convicted 26-year-old Jose Ibarra in the murder of Georgia nursing student Laken Riley and has sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Riley was killed in February while on a run on the University of Georgia campus. Ibarra was charged with 10 counts related to the killing, including malice murder, felony murder, kidnapping, aggravated assault with intent to rape, aggravated battery, and evidence tampering. The killing fueled the national debate over immigration after it was revealed that Ibarra entered the country illegally and was allowed to stay to pursue his immigration case. The trial began last Friday with prosecutors calling more than a dozen law enforcement officers to testify. Ibarra waived his right to a jury trial earlier this month, leaving the decision to convict or acquit with Athens Clarke County Superior Court Judge H. Patrick Haggard. Haggard handed down the conviction Wednesday morning. Hours later, after hearing impact statements from Laken's friends and family, Haggard handed down his sentence. Ibarra received 2 life sentences plus 27 years to be served consecutively, all without the possibility of parole. The House Ethics Committee meets today to consider the release of a report on the man President-elect Trump wants to serve as the nation's top law enforcement officer. The committee has been investigating Matt Gaetz for nearly 3 years over allegations of sexual misconduct and illegal drug use, among other claims. Gaetz denies any wrongdoing, but the former Florida representative resigned from the House last week just days before the report was set to be released, and after Trump nominated Gaetz to be his Attorney General. That sparked a fierce battle over whether the report should be made public as part of the vetting process. Jesse Byrnes, senior editor here at The Hill, joins us to discuss. Jesse, this ethics committee is a 10-member panel split evenly between Democrats and Republicans, so one Republican would have to vote yes for it to be released, at least via this vehicle. Michael Schnell and Emily Brooks have an article on the Hill right now. There's an interesting quote in it. It says, "There's not enough money in the world to pay me to serve on the ethics committee right now." That's from an unnamed Republican in the House. Talk about this tough situation that these Republican House members on this committee are facing.
Well, it's a very tough situation, and they're really between a rock and a hard place. You have Speaker Mike Johnson, who has tried to put pressure on these Republicans to not release this report, saying that it would go against precedent. Of course, in the past, the committee, going back in the 1980s, did release one report, and so there is some precedent, but it is highly unusual. Typically, when a member leaves the House, they do not release any kind of investigative findings on them. Now, Democrats, of course, are calling foul. They're trying to get this report to be released. And at the very minimum, members in both parties do want the Senate Judiciary Committee, which is responsible for confirming these nominees, to have access to the findings of this report if they're going to try to vote to advance Gaetz' nomination in the Senate.
It's a little bit different in this case, too, because Gaetz resigned just days before it was set to be released. It would appear to prevent it from being released.
Well, and Republican senators specifically, it is an uphill battle to try to get their buy-in for Gaetz' nomination, and we've seen a lot of Republicans really hold their fire on Gaetz. He is, of course, viewed as the most controversial of the Trump picks, maybe rivaled only by Tulsi Gabbard, but he is very much at the top of the list of these cabinet picks to watch in terms of maybe they won't get confirmed. It's definitely an uphill battle. And these Republican senators who Gaetz is meeting with on Capitol Hill today, he'll be meeting with them again after the Thanksgiving break, he has to convince them that he, number one, knows the Department of Justice, and number two, that there's nothing in this report that would actually, kind of sully their view of him to actually vote against him.
There was also an FBI investigation into Gaetz that did not come back with any charges, but Senate Democrats are now saying that they want to see that report as well.
That's right. And for the Department of Justice, of course, they have their own prosecuting criteria that they go through. So even if they made the decision that there was not enough evidence to actually prosecute Matt Gaetz, there is still definitely evidence that they collected as part of that investigation that Senate Democrats are really keen on getting a hold of. Now, we do understand, at least in the Ethics Committee report, the allegations concern alleged sexual misconduct as well as perhaps illegal drug use. But we don't know the full details of that. And of course, Gaetz is having to really defend himself on these issues without the public having a full understanding of what's fully in this report.
Yeah, no matter what happens with the report, it seems like it's ultimately going to be in the lap of Republican senators to decide what to do with Gaetz. Vice President-elect J.D. Vance is shepherding Gaetz around, meeting Capitol Hill today, meeting with Republican senators. Seems like that would be a pretty tough sell. I would love to be in those meetings listening to how Gaetz is trying to sell himself to these Republican senators.
Yeah, and the reality is there are at least a handful of senators would have to actually buck the party and vote against Gaetz or Tulsi Gabbard, any of these nominees, to actually vote them down. And so is it likely for that to happen? No, in the sense of, Republicans have a very strong 53-seat majority in January, so you would have to have a handful of senators actually vote against these nominees. Now, there are several senators to watch. Mitch McConnell, who of course is no longer in the leader position, is one of the wild cards entering January. He is unburdened by the leadership position. He very much has the ability to vote his conscience when it comes to these nominees. There's a number.
He has allies too.
And he has allies as well. And there are a number of others who have really signaled, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, who have signaled that they have shock at this nomination from Gaetz. Others who have signaled, even though they haven't outright said that they're opposed to the nomination, they've signaled that they want Gaetz to actually provide a lot more details to at least paint the picture for why he is a credible nominee in their view.
But similarly to what's happening to the Republicans on this House Ethics Committee, the screws are being turned on these Republican senators. Elon Musk is promising to fund primary challenges for anyone who opposes the Trump agenda. I know senators are a little bit insulated from that because they have 6 years between having to run for office. But is that same pressure that's being placed on the House members a real issue for Republican senators as well?
It is to some extent. There are some senators like Joni Ernst who are up for re-election in a couple of years, and so it'll be very key to watch how some of those senators. Bill Cassidy is another one from Louisiana, another kind of key figure to watch. Senators in the Republicans in the Senate are typically more independent. We saw that in Trump's first term; they were less willing to go along with Trump's agenda when they thought that it wasn't something they could support. But the key will be: are there going to be 4 senators who buck the party? We already see Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins. They're halfway there, but they would need to find a couple more to actually sink some of these nominations.
Let's talk about Tulsi Gabbard, Trump's nominee for Director of National Intelligence. You talked about Mitch McConnell, and he's a defense hawk, been around for a long time, has allies. Would seem to be that if there was someone in the Senate on the Republican side that had a big problem with the Gabbard nomination, it could be him. She's going to go through the Senate Intelligence Committee. She's been criticized in the past for what people say is parroting Russian disinformation. What do you make of her nomination, chances of actually being confirmed, and who are the people to watch as that plays out?
Yeah, McConnell's certainly a person to watch. Of course, one of his crowning achievements that he has viewed was getting 3 of Trump's Supreme Court nominees confirmed. And so he, for a long time, has had a lot of value in getting nominees confirmed for Trump. And so, if he does buck the incoming president on some of these picks like Gabbard, that is going to be a huge move, just given the fact that he understands the gravity of getting the president's team in place. McConnell is certainly someone to watch. There's a number of others. Bill Cassidy, incoming Senator John Curtis from Utah is another pick who Gaetz has previously criticized, but he's also viewed as a key member on the Gabbard nomination too. Tulsi Gabbard has her work cut out for her for trying to convince Republicans that she is a credible nominee to lead the DNI because of, number one, she's parroted Russian talking points in the past. She visited secretly Bashar al-Assad in Syria, and she's just said a lot of things that are now coming back to haunt her, and they're things in black and white that you can't just kind of write off. She has actually said things that she is going to have to now defend or backtrack on.
Those confirmation hearings are going to be interesting, to say the least. I want to talk about the waning days of the Biden administration and Democratic control of the Senate. One of the big goals they're trying to put forward is push through a lot of judicial nominees. Republicans are putting up a fight trying to force roll calls to slow down the effort, but there's been some Senate Republicans that have been skipping votes and essentially allowing Democrats to maybe move forward with this more quickly than they could if Democrats or if Republicans put the full court press on trying to block them. Senator Tom Tillis from North Carolina called out Republicans for not showing up and allowing Democrats to move these picks forward. How important is that going to be in the next few years with the Republicans in full control for Democrats and progressives to from their point of view have these judges in place to maybe push back on what the Trump administration is trying to do? Well,
it's certainly important, and for Senate Republicans, even though Democrats, if all of them show up, they are able to confirm these nominees, you do have this situation now where on several days this week, Democrats have been able to advance these nominations despite Democrats or independents who have caucused with Democrats like Manchin or Sinema voting against some of these picks. And so if all Republicans did show up, they could ostensibly vote down some of these nominations or at least drag out the clock. Democrats are thrilled by this reality, and Trump himself has also called on the Senate to not allow any more of these, and still we're seeing Republicans not showing up for roll call votes and Biden being able to confirm these picks. So now these are lifetime appointments. These are people who are going to shape policy in certain regions of the country when judicial issues come up, and they have the ability to really put their finger on the scale when it comes to how they're ruling. And so likely Trump's agenda in some of these places is going to be a factor and something these judges might be ruling on.
Some of those senators are members of Trump's administration or potential administration, so he might have to answer to them missing those votes. Just want to quickly ask you, we're running out of time here, but one of the big things on the agenda for Republicans in the new Congress is pushing through an extension of the tax cuts that were first passed during Trump's first administration. Big question is pay-fors. Will Republicans have to find ways to pay for the extension of these tax cuts, or will they continue to increase the deficit and debt to solidify them?
Well, there's definitely going to be, this is going to be a major debate, a hot debate in Congress in Washington in 2025. And we've already seen Republicans signaling that they want to reform Medicaid. We've already seen Republicans, especially pro-Trump Republicans, look at tariffs as a potential way to raise revenue. There's going to have to be a multi-pronged effort to raise the amount of money that is going to be required to pay for these Trump tax cuts that were his crowning achievement from 2017 that he wants to keep in place moving forward. But it means that senators and members of the House have their work cut out for them, and Democrats are not going to help in any way if it means trying to gut Medicaid.
Yep. Lots to watch for. Jesse Byrnes, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Drew.
Telecom giant Comcast has announced that it's moving forward with a plan to drop many of its cable TV networks and restructure them into a new, separate business. That includes some big brands like MSNBC, CNBC, USA, Oxygen, E, Sci-Fi, and the Golf Channel, properties that together brought in about $7 billion in revenue over the last year. Meantime, Comcast says it's retaining Bravo, the NBC broadcast service, and the Peacock streaming service. Mark Lazarus, current chairman of NBC Universal's media group, has been tapped to lead the new spinoff. According to a report from the Wall Street Journal, the company hopes that the split will put both businesses in a better position for growth. The split is expected to take about a year to complete. The Pacific Northwest is reeling as a major storm continues to sweep across the region this week. So far, it's brought heavy rain, winds, and knocked out power, downed trees, and left at least one person dead. The bomb cyclone hit the West Coast on Tuesday. The Weather Prediction Center says it expects about 12 to 16 inches of rain over California and southwest Oregon into Friday, and warned of flash flooding, rock slides, and debris flows. The center also warned of a blizzard with whiteout conditions along the Cascades and in parts of Northern California. As of noon on Wednesday, over 500,000 houses are reportedly without power in Washington state. A lot has happened on this very day in history. On this date, the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden, was born. Plus, McDonald's made its 50 billionth hamburger. Here's a look at News Nation's Moment in Time.
Today is November 20th. In 1866, Howard University was founded in Washington, D.C. The 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden, was born. Queen Elizabeth II married Philip Mountbatten at Westminster Abbey. American puppeteers Jim and Jane Henson established Muppets Incorporated, which is now known as the Jim Henson Company. And do you remember when Ronald Reagan announced candidacy for U.S. President in 1975? And believe it or not, someone made record of McDonald's making its 50 billionth hamburger on this day. In 1985, the first version of Windows was released. Plus, Diana, Princess of Wales, admitted she cheated on Prince Charles in a TV interview.
After that televised interview, the Queen urged Princess Diana and Prince Charles to finalize their divorce immediately, and it was the following August. That's today's Daily Debrief. I'm Drew Petrimoulx. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hill's YouTube channel, and come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.